Morning, learning as a schus for Shlema for Ilan Chaya Basarach, and as a aliyah for the neshama of Meir ben Elazar. On Daf Samach Daled Amid Aleph. Um, Amar Mar, 9 lines from the bottom. Amar Mar. So we have the Bryce on the top of the Amid. Tani Gabi Beim, it's Beim, Kol Shekadosh Val Goyos Rosh Echad Kad, Rosh Echad Chad. It has to be round and it have tapered on one end and rounded on the other. If the white is on the outside and the yolk is on the inside, it's tar. The reversed is tame. The final din in the Bryce on the top was that if the if the yolk and the white, or the white and the yolk, are mixed together, it's the bay of a sheretz. There are shmeina shrotzim that the Torah lists that they are metama, right? A oif tame is not metama at all. A oif nevelis oif. There's no such thing as a nevelis oif tame. Nevelis oif tar is metama with with blia, with metama begadim abeis ablia. But a base a sheretz, a nevela of a sheretz, is metama. Tama ben bayin negia. So if you have this egg that has a mixed together yolk and white, you know that it's a sheretz. So you have to turn around the words. If you can see that the egg of the sheretz is not matama like the sheretz, but if you could see there's a fetus or an embryo, a formed embryo, you hold it up to the light and you see there's like a little bit, there's a body forming inside of it. Now that still can't be matama by touching, because as long as it's not exposed, it's not available to be touched, because over here it's inside of the shell, that's not able to be matama. But if it has a hole in it, then it's even the shell is matama. That means as long as it's the tuma itself is covered, that it's inaccessible, it's not matama at all. Once there's a hole and you see there's the embryo inside of the egg, that will be matama.
So the Kardashian part is going on the embryo?
The what?
The size of it. That has to be the size of a Kardashian. Is that the egg or the embryo?
I think the whole thing is matama at this point, right?
I mean, why do you need the embryo here? Isn't the egg
No,
itself?
because the egg of a sheretz is not matama. It's only if it has a body of a sheretz.
Hmm.
Um, so but the question is, you don't know what's inside of it, right? You just see an egg. You don't know what the egg of what it is, right? So that's why the Torah is the Bryce is identifying for you if you see an embryo form, but you can't see what it's going to grow up to be. It's still an embryo, but the yolk and that means it's all mixed together, the white and the yolk of this, which obviously the yolk contains the embryo inside of it. If they're mixed together, you know that it's a sheretz, and therefore a kadasha is going to be mitamne. I guess what you're asking is any egg is going to almost by definition have a kadasha, especially if you could see the embryo.
Right. I'm assuming it's still on the side of the
Yeah,
embryo.
I'm saying I think it's just saying that's mitama kadasha as opposed to, let's say, tumas oil, where you need much more than
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So it's saying that it's matama by touching. That's what we call matama kadosh. Just like say that the nevelas oiftar is matama begadim abeis abliya. Doesn't mean only begadim, but that's the way we identify the tumah. Practicing more Moscow vina, but Dilma denachashi. How do you know that this is a maybe it's a tummy animal, but it's not a sheretz. Maybe it's a non-sheretz creepy crawly, right? Nechashim snakes also lay eggs. So maybe it's not one a snake is not one of the showing the shrotzim that is nevela is matama. Ela amarava shem rikla shirim. So he says einachanami. You can't be sure just because you see that they're mixed together that it's a sheretz. Because we said it's a sheretz, it doesn't mean that it means bedafka the tomedik a sheretz. The nachash is also a type of sheretz. There's a subset within shrotzim of the shmoyne shrotzim that are matama, but a nachash is also going to have a mixed white and yolk, but it's not matama. So we give up on the tumah because it might be something that's not matama. We're saying that if it was formed and he ate it, he gets malchus for sheretz hasheretz al haaretz. Now, kol sheretz hasheretz al haaretz is not the same thing as the sheretz, the shmeina shrotzim that's matama. Those are those eight shrotzim. But the general rule is that any sheretz hasheretz al haaretz, not just the shmeina shrotzim, including a snake, the Torah says kol sheretz hasheretz al haaretz, you shouldn't eat it. So someone who eats it is going to be he's going to be chayiv for being over on that lav. So Zok the Gemara saying is, if you don't know if this egg is really, could be a snake or it could be a bird. Now, even though in either case there's a lav in eating it, right? Obviously, if it's a bird, you're not allowed to eat a embryo of a bird. It doesn't have shchita. It's obviously treif, but it's not sheretz al haaretz. It's a sheretz ha'oif. So you have to give hasra based on which one of the two things it is. That's like Rashi says, sheretz al haaretz. If not, we said that the Brisa told us that if the yolk and the egg white are mixed together, it's a sheretz al haaretz. Havamina mishum oif tamehu dasiru boy lasru be mishum sheretz oif the asur be mishum sheretz haaretz leiloki. If you don't give the right hasra, you have to give hasra for what the lav is. So therefore, the Brisa gives you an eitzah to identify if it's a sheretz al haaretz or a sheretz oif. That Gemara yachi ma'ir yedetmei afil tahira nami. If that's the case, right? The lashon of the brisa was chalman v'chavim ram zebzeh b'yidushi beis hasheretz. It's a beis hasheretz. What difference does it make if it's a beis hasheretz? It doesn't have to be a bay of a sheretz. It could even be the bay of a bird. The Tanya, kol sheretz hasheretz al haaretz. Any sheretz that sheretz on the ground, l'rabis afreichim sheniftechu einayim. We learn out that a bird has two different statuses during its lifestyle. If one eats an embryo of it doesn't even have to be an embryo, even a chick, even a bird that laid an egg, and the egg gave the egg hatched, and a bird came out, but its eyes have not yet opened, it still remains at that point with the din of a sheretz hasheretz al aretz. When its eyes open, then it graduates to become an oif. It's almost like a caterpillar and a butterfly. It has two different statuses. Prior to opening its eyes, it still has the din of a sheretz hasheretz al aretz. So the Gemara is saying, we have to tell you, the Brisa had said that if the yolk and the egg are mixed together, then it has a din sheretz because it's a din sheretz tame. But it's not just it doesn't it could have that din of a sheretz tame even if it's a oif tahira. Zakt Gemara. Um, Right. So what if it's a miktas, whether it's a oif tar or a oif tame or sheretz tmeya, they both have the same. They're all going to be the same hasra. So why are you telling me that this is bedafka sheretz al aretz? Everything is sheretz al aretz when it's still in the egg. It still remains a sheretz al aretz even after it hatches. So Gemara midrabanu cross bachta b'yalmo. No, really, um, the these birds are really mutter to eat as soon as they are born, and certainly before they're born, midaraisa. This is so it's and it's only the Rabbanan that we say that you can't eat the birds, the newly hatched birds and their embryos. So therefore, we have to be mechalik, enechanami, that you have to the proper um the proper hasra for them. If you eat that, you're not going to get malchus on them anyway. So it's not a question of hasra. The hasra would only apply to the sheretz hatmei. A sheretz the even though it's aser, even though the egg of a kosher bird is going to be also it's only midrabanan. It's not relevant to this din of hasra, so we limit. That's why the Brisa tells you how to identify the egg of a sheretz. Tan rabbanan giule beim mutaris. If you boil together a ostrich egg, which is non-kosher, with your chicken eggs, put them together in a pot, the chicken eggs do not become kosher. Even though normally we say that the taste, the tam of the non-kosher thing goes into the kosher thing that's been cooked together with it. Over here, the shell stops the tam from coming through, and it's not going to be it's not going to aser the beya tahira. Beyim muzrois. Rashi says, what's beyim muzrois? It's beyim that were not fertilized. Rashi says, she'enin shel zachar. There was no zachar involved, which is the standard eggs that we have, that we buy a dozen eggs, are unfertilized eggs. They're never going to have a bird. No bird is ever going to come out of it. And the mother hen, however, sat on it, not like us, where it goes directly into the machinery and it takes away the egg. The mother sat on that egg, and eventually it went bad. It went off. Nefesh yafa, someone who is over here. Nefesh yafa is almost a euphemism. Rashi says nefesh yafa she'ene istis ve'en da'at zekoytzem em toichlam v'al b'yashva aleim time goes yamim rabim. She could eat on it. We don't worry about blood spot in them. If it does get a blood spot, you can just take away the spot itself and eat the bird. Now the Brisa moves on to, however, if it's a regular fertilized egg, nimtza aleit kair dam, zayrik is adam v'eichel esashar. you could throw out the you could eat the red of then you could eat the rest of the egg, and you have to just take out the blood, which is really the same thing we said before for the unfertilized egg, but the difference is going to be in the rules. Depends where that blood spot is. It's not a hard and fast rule that any blood spot could be thrown out on a fertilized egg. Amr Rav Yirmiyah, who shenimtzal kesher shelo. That which we say that you could take away the blood and eat the rest of it, that's only if it was on the place where the yolk is attached to the end of the shell. That means that there's a rounded end and a tapered end of the egg, and each end has like a little rope-like kesher that attaches it to the egg, that the yolk is not spinning around inside of it, and that's where originally it was attached to the mother before the shell fully formed on one end. And the other end, I think it's where the amniotic fluid was attached. So if it's found inside of that kesher, then you can just remove the blood and eat the rest of it. But if it's found somewhere else, then that means that there was blood that was not part of the original creation of this. While it's still in the kesher, you could assume that that's the only place it went, because that's where it originally forms. That's where them. So it was starting something to be formed there. So you could just get rid of it and eat the rest of it if it's in the kesher. But if it's somewhere else, then you have to be concerned that it got all around, and you have to discard the entire egg. Tani dustoy avud Rav Apoitriki. Lo yishanu l'shenimtza al chalvan shelo. Aval nimtza al chalvan shelo afilu beya asura. So that which we said about the kesher, that you could throw out the kesher, the blood spot, and eat the rest of it, that's where it was on the chalvan, on the yolk part, right? We said that part of it is attached to the rounded spot is attached to the yolk, and the other side is attached, I'm sorry, not to the yolk, to the white. And the pointy part is the tapered part is attached to where the mother originally was attached to it, which is the yolk. So if it's in the chalbain, in the part of the kesher that's attached to the whites, then you can throw out the blood. Aval nimtza al chalman shelo afilu beya asura. Then the whole beya is asura again. We assume that it started growing an embryo and then that dispersed around the entire egg. My time, adashada tichla b'kulo. We have to assume that whatever embryo started evolving or growing over there, spread out through the entire egg. Amler Megvia Mibexil Ravashi Ipchatani. Ravashi Ipchatani. He had it back, he had the other way around, that if it was in the white part of the kesher that's attached to the white, then it already has spread throughout the egg. But if it was in the kesher, then you could assume it's localized, and therefore you could just remove the blood. Tana Kamei Abaye who detarts in LA Hachi. They said this backwards pshat, where the attached to the yolk is pasul, and Abaya fixed it and made it the proper way, that if it's attached to the yolk, it's also not if it's attached to the white. Where do we know that the bay of a behemoth tmeya is also midaraisa? It's also to eat. Shenemer ves bas hayana, the daughter of the ostrich. V'chibas yesh liana, does the ostrich have a daughter? It doesn't have children. It hatches in an egg, so it's not a daughter. Ela ezu beya tmeya. The Basyana is a reference to tell you that the egg remains attached to the mother, that just like the mother is also the ostrich itself is a oif tame, so too its progeny, its eggs are also going to be asatit. So Gemara v'dilma hainu shmayu. Maybe that's just its name. Maybe it's just called the bas yana. That's what we call the ostrich. So Gemara loisal kedaitach. T'chsiv bas ami la'achsar. My children will be cruel. Ki ya'anim ba'midbar. Like the ostrich in the midbar. So you see that it's called just a yana. It's not called a bas yana. It's not the proper name for ostrich is a yana, not a bas yana. But we have a number of examples where the Torah calls it a bas yana. But ese misped kasanim, they'll make hespedim like the jackals, the evel kabnois yana, and they'll be mourn like the bas benois yana, like the daughter of a yana, which so it seems to be calling them calling the ostrich by the name of bas of benois yana, bas yana, same thing. So I don't know. Kiyana zushim savos al boneha. It's the attack over there. It's talking about the daughter of Yana, that the ostrich is misavel on its children. And the benois Yana will dwell there. So that seems to be calling the ostriches the name that they call is benois Yana. Like the ostrich that dwells with its brood. The beast of the field will be mechabed me, te'enim, the jackals of benois Yana, and the benois Yana, it's talking about the ostriches. Beya, and if you'll say that it's talking about benois Yana, it's coming to tell you, it's not the name, but it's talking about to tell you this din of that the benois Yana is also the eggs, Beya bas mei mashirahi, right? It's saying that they're going to be mechabed me. An egg can't be mechabed anyone. It's an egg. It's an inanimate object. I mean, I wouldn't think that an ostrich could be mechabed you either, so it seems it's a little hard to understand this kasha. El ksiv, hayana ksiv bas hayana. Elamai, that sometimes the Torah calls it the ostrich just a yana, and sometimes it calls it benois yana. Shani hacha, the pasuk safra l'shtei tevis. Since the Torah is separated here, it says the place where we originally learned it out. The Torah says when it's describing the oif tame that you're not to eat, it says bas hayan. So since the Torah is separated into two things, the bas and the yana, and as two separate words, so that's how, therefore, we were able to darshan the bas as referring to the beya. In fact, the Gemara with the pasuk lu safra betarti tevis mamina treshemis ninu. Can you just say because it's not made as one single word, but it's separate into two words, that means it's two names, two separate proper names? Al meyata as kedar la'omer. The pasuk usafa betray hachanami detarti shmeinenu. Sometimes the Torah calls kedar la'omer. Kedar la'omer was one of the Arba Malachim that fought with the Chamesh Malachim, and then Avram fought with them. Sometimes he's called kedar la'omer as one word, and sometimes he's said as two words. But it's still the same person, whether it's one word or two words. So Gemara Ami Hasan b'shtei tevis pasuklu b'shnei shitim loy pasuklu. Over there, by Kedar La'omer, the rules are that you can have the word Kedar and La'omer separately, but they can't be on two separate lines in a Sefer Torah, because it's part of the same name. When it says Bas Hayana, there's no restriction in the Safras that it has to be on the same line. It could even be on two lines, so that shows that the extra word Bas is to darshan, to include Tevis. So then the Mishnah continued. What's that? He said, Kol oif hadairis tame. Any oif that claws is tame kol sheyesh le'etzbe yisera v'zefet kurvgam niklef tar. If it has an extra finger or an extra claw and a crop and its gizzard can peel, it's tar. Blazer b'tzadik oimer kol oif acholik is ragel of tame. Any oif that it grasps a branch to stand by putting some claws on one side of the branch and others on the other, is going to be that's also a simon that it's tummy. And the Leal Aimer Dairis Va'eichel Yadua Shu Tummy, which is just like what we just saw in our Brisa. In our Mishnah, our Brisa says the same thing, that anytime it's Dairis Va'eichel, when it claws and eats, then you know that it's tummy. Yesh le'etz b'yaseir v'zav v'karbonai niklaf b'yadushu tar. If it has the other three simonim, it doesn't. It's not kailif. It doesn't. It's not dairis, and it has the other three simonim. You know that it's tar. And like we said before, if it has two of the simonim or three of the simonim, one simon, you have to know if it's a paris vaznia, if it's an erev. If you can eliminate those, then even with lesser simonim, it's also going to be tar. Like we saw in our Mishnah, you spread in front of it a string, and for the bird to land on. If it grasps it with two of its claws on each side, that's tamei. But if it's three and one, then it's tar. Shimon Elazar says any bird that grabs other birds, it's a predator that grabs birds in the air, it's tummy. In fact, Gemara Tziparta Nami Miklat Kolta. The tzipirta is a kosher bird that also either means that generally you find that kosher birds do this, that they will grab other birds from the air, or it's referring to a specific kosher bird that we know about that it does it. Amar Abaye Koilet Va'eichel Karmin. Abaye said, no, we said that it grabbed other birds, it means it grabs the birds and eats it while it's still flying. But a kosher bird, even if it grabs a smaller bird, it will take it to the ground and eat it there. A bird that we're not sure what it is, I guess it has some simanim, or we're not sure if it's dairis. If it lives amongst the tmeim, you can assume it's tamei. Im tahirim tar, but if it's amongst the tahirim, it's tar. Kaman krebel yezer. It's like Rebel Yezer, tiny Blazer Loyal Chinum Halach Zarzel Eitzel Erev. It's not for nothing that the Zarzer, if you remember the Zarzer, what we said by Erev Lamina, we said that includes the Zarzer, which is similar to the Erev. So the reason why the Zarzer hangs around with the Erev, because it's part of its min. So we're like Rebel Yezer, who says that if two things are living together, you could assume they're from the same min. So Kamara Afil Tem Rabbanon. You could even say like the Rabbanon, Shachain v'nidma ka'amrina. That they say that it's only not kosher if it's similar to the bird that it's hanging around with. But if it's not similar, we don't assume it. So it could be, even the Rabbanim will agree with what we said, that if you have a bird that you're not sure about that's hanging around with a not kosher bird, if they both have similar characteristics, you can assume it's part of the same species, and therefore it's tamei. Hey, let's just get started a little bit and have a long discussion of grasshoppers. So we said in the Mishnah, b'chagavim, l'gabi grasshoppers, kol sheyesh le'arba raglayim, anything that has 4 legs, v'arba knafayim, and 4 wings, v'kartzulim, and 2 jumping, what do you call it? Legs. And the 4th thing is that its wings cover roiv. And finally, Rabbi Yisrael Shmoi Chagav. In addition, its name is called a Chagav. Okay. So Zok to Gemara. My rubai. First of all, the last thing that we said is that the wings have to cover roiv. Amar Yehuda Marav roiv archai. Yehuda Marav says it has to be most of the length of the grasshopper. Others say it has to be roiv of the height or the circumference of the grasshopper. Amar Papa hilchach be'ina roiv archai be'ina roiv kefay. You're going to need both. Tan Rabban. Ein le'achshev va'asid ligadol achazman. if if the um if the grasshopper does not have these kartsulin, we said it has to have the the jumping legs. What if it doesn't have it now when it's young, but it grows it when it's older? Goin hazachal. Hazachal is a kind of grasshopper that's its development. Mutter. The Bryce says it's mutter. Asher loy kra'ayim. The Torah says asher the lashon of the pasuk is achaz v'teichelu mikol sheretz ha'oif ha'olech ala arba asher loy kra'ayim. If you look in the Torah are on the side, it's with lamid vav, but it's written the way we say in the Gemara asher loy kra'ayim, that it doesn't have these jumping legs. So we dash from the fact that the Kri and the Ksiv are different. The fact that Ksiv is that it doesn't have it. That's going to also be considered a kosher grasshopper. My zachal. What is the zachal? Amrabaya askarin. This is the grasshopper that's called askarin. Tanraban. Es eila mehem techelu. It says this is what you should eat. Es ha'arba leminoi, ve'es ha'sloam lemineu, ve'es ha'charga lemineu, ve'es ha'chagav lemineu. These are the four types of grasshoppers that are mentioned. The arba, slom, chargoil, and chagav. And each of them it says lemineu. Arba ze goivoi. The arba is a reference to the grasshopper called the goivoi. Slom ze roshoin, chargol ze nipol, and chagav ze gadian. And matam loimer leminoi lemineu lemineu lemineu. It says on each one lemineu dal pomim. Lahavi sipiris kromim b'yoichna Yerushalaymis. The Siparis is the bird of the Siparis is a word for a bird of the kromim from the vineyards. V'yochna Yerushalaymis, the yochna from Yerushalayim. Bartzuvia, which is another, I guess the one that's related to the third one. The chargoil, and the harzavnis, which is related to the chagov. Okay. That's the way this first brisa darshans the four names of the arba together with the additional lemineu to be referring to four grasshoppers together with four other grasshoppers. Okay, we'll stop over here. Tomorrow we'll see the brisa that analyzes it slightly differently.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Shkoyach, have a good day.